as my children get older and they start feeding me lines like, well, all my friends, and context, 8-year-old, 9-year-old friends, all my friends already have their own iPhone. I'm like, huh? All my friends have a TV in their room. I'm like, ah. All my friends are like, blah, blah, blah. So this really hit me a few months ago. Like, we're sitting there eating, and my 9-year-old, she complained that the smoked turkey on her kale and arugula salad was clashing with the smoked Gouda and Kalamata olives. And she was complaining about that, and I looked at her and explained to her, when I was a boy, we ate fried bologna sandwiches with cheese puffs. Which has me asking the question, how? In our bicycle helmet wearing preteens with iPhones, everybody's a winner and gets an A, suburban paradise, how are we supposed to protect our children from living with a sense of entitlement and self-aggrandizement? So I regularly break out the when I was a boy stories, and they're good because I grew up on a farm. We suffered. We worked. But for some reason, those stories don't seem to be working. And it makes me seriously wonder as I ponder this, are their lives too easy? Like, are their lives too easy? Like, you guys know the whole thing about, like, if you help a chicken break out of its egg, like, you're setting the chicken up for failure. It won't be strong enough. It won't flourish. It won't live. It'll be the runt. It'll die. Do we have a whole generation that's going to die off? How do we protect our kids from this sense of entitlement that seems to be spreading across our country and our world? And the more I've reflected on this, and my wife and I, we've had multiple discussions about this, like, how do we do this in this suburban world? Like, how do we raise kids like this? And the thing that keeps coming back to me, though, is maybe this isn't just a kid problem. Like, maybe the problem is that our kids are becoming just like us. Which begs the questions, are our lives too easy? Like, what does living in Chester County do to one's soul? Could it be that we are ruined by our success, wealth, freedom, lack of persecution, and increasingly comfortable lives? Could that be? So today I want to ask what is a very American question, and I want to recognize that. Some of you aren't from America, and this will sound weird to your ears, because in the vast majority of the world, this question would not apply. The question is this: how do we protect our hearts, not just our kids, but our hearts from being ruined by success, by wealth, by education, by opportunity, by freedom? How do we protect our hearts? Now, the thing is as it turns out, that this is not just an American question. It happens to be a very Corinthian question too, which brings us today to 1 Corinthians chapter 4. If you have scriptures, I would encourage you to turn there. You might have it on your phone. This is one worth diving into here. 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Whenever I start to feel bad about myself and my entitlement and my sins and things like that, I just open up 1 Corinthians and I feel so much better. Like, they're so much worse than us. Seriously. So much worse. It's beautiful. So unlike any other church in the New Testament stands this church at Corinth. And you want to know what's ruining the church at Corinth. Like, you want to know what's causing gross immorality, division, people to get drunk at communion, lawsuits, and the general insanity that is the church at Corinth. It's that their lives are too good, too easy, too successful. So unlike any other church in the New Testament, they are going to have money, freedom, and education. And unlike every other church in the New Testament, they aren't persecuted. And this combination of success, power, money, freedom, and lack of persecution somehow was ruining them. So watch this. Starting chapter 4, verse 1. Oh, wow. And let's see if I can load this guy up. Yes, if someone would like to make an investment in a new pad for technology for me, that would be brilliant. That's so good. Greg Hytha, you're so encouraging to this brother. Suffering for the Lord right here. My iPad's old. Oh, no. This, then, is how you ought to regard me, regard us. So we're building off of chapter 3 last week. Chapter 3, verse 5, the Apostle Paul, he lays out Apollos and himself as examples to be seen, to be followed, to be imitated. Like, look at us. Look at the way we're doing ministry. Look at the way we think of ourselves, and you apply this to yourself. And he's just going to build right off of this. He's going to say, we're examples of how God views greatness in his kingdom. Examples of when you're given authority, power, money, influence. This is how you're supposed to use it. And today he's going to lay out a couple of images that are going to just build on top of like the field last week and the construction image. So he says, this is how you should regard us. As servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. So the first word here is servants. And it basically means assistants, like an assistant, someone who does the directives of their superior, period. That's how it's generally used. But in Corinth, it has a bit more colorful meaning here, because you might remember Corinth was between two harbors, and it's a shipping community. So Paul uses a boating word. This literally is hoop eretes, which is just fun to say. Sounds like something from an 80s rap song. It literally means under rower. So it's the image of a Roman war vessel, and at the bottom deck, the bottom level, there's these benches filled on either side with these oars sticking in, and then there's all these slaves chained in place who have to row the war vessel. If you've ever seen Ben-Hur, you've seen an under rower, right? The man, Charlton Heston himself. Under rower. That's the image. So I want you to unpack this. Think about this image for a minute. The under rowers, they can't even see where they're going. There's a captain on top of the ship, and he's barking orders down, and their job is to blindly, passionately obey the orders of the captain with all of their might because their lives are on the line. And the Apostle Paul says, that's what I'm like. I'm an under rower of Christ. But then he builds on that. He says he's not just an under rower, a servant of Christ, but view us as those entrusted with the mysteries of God. And this one is going to get some playtime. It's a word worth knowing. It happens a lot in the New Testament. It's throughout the Scriptures, an image that we need to wrestle with. Oikonomos, right? It means the chief household slave. So again, a household slave. This is a slavery image again, but take the 18th century African slave trade and set that aside for a minute. Slavery in the Roman world, though dehumanizing, is different than the African slave trade, okay? So if you have any questions about that, go back. August 2016, I preached in 1 Timothy on slavery in the Roman world. Unpack that. Check that out on your own free time. But here's the idea. An oikonomos managed or oversaw the entire Roman household. But when you think household, don't think of my house in Evergreen Acres. They were responsible for more than like taking out the trash and raking the leaves here. Like this person, the chief household slave, was in charge of the entire household in the Roman sense, and only an uber wealthy Roman would have this. So their household did not just consist of their lawn and their family, but it consisted of all the businesses they ran, the fields that needed to be farmed, all the slaves under their leadership, all the staff, all the business endeavors they were doing, and the education of their children, and the food that they ate every day. So this person would be really important in that world. They did farming and land acquisition, business endeavors, managing the staff and slaves, education of the children. His job was to make everything in the family and in the family business ran smoothly. So some of these were overseeing I want you to think about this. Some of these in Corinth that day would be overseeing hundreds of slaves and servants. Some of them would be overseeing multiple businesses. Some of them would be overseeing, in today's terms, millions and millions of dollars worth of investments. This was not a small job. So this title, this theme comes up again and again in the scriptures. Most famously, you could think of, not in a Roman context, but in an Egyptian context. In the Old Testament, there's a figure named Joseph. Remember, he's sold into slavery, then he goes into Potiphar's house, and Potiphar sees his great administrative ability, so he makes him the chief household slave. He's now overseeing all of Potiphar's house. That ended up not working out so well, but eventually he ends up in the palace. Now he's the chief household slave for Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's household involves all of Egypt, so he's overseeing all of Egypt. That's the image we're supposed to see. In the parables of Jesus and in the writings of Paul, you're going to see this term or idea come up again and again and again. It's an important one to explain our relationship with God. So the Apostle Paul says, I want you to think about this. I want you to unpack this. And the ultimate test of a chief household slave is this, is when the master goes on business, when the master travels. Back in that day, they did not have modern communication, no Skype, Zoom, whatever, no phone calls, occasional letters. But when you went on business to Rome or far off places in the empire, it would take months, sometimes years, you'd be gone. And during that time, the master of the house would come to the chief household slave and write a legal document that said, my authority is now officially invested in you. I'm empowering you to oversee all of my household, my business, my money, land acquisition, signing new leases, making new business deals, hiring, firing, all of that, caring for my household. I want you to do it as if I'm here. And then he would leave. As you might imagine, sometimes this worked out well, and sometimes it didn't. Verse 2 says this, now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. So if you're a chief household slave and the master's gone away and he's entrusted this to you, it's required that you prove faithful. And scholars think that the Apostle Paul is unpacking a parable of Jesus here. Let's just see how Jesus puts it. This is Luke 12, verse 42. Jesus says it this way. Who then is the faithful and wise manager, household servant, whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. It will be good for him. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. If he's faithful with that job, he's going to get even more authority. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master's taking a long time in coming. And then he begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and in an hour he is not aware of, and he will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place of unbelievers. Like, whoa, that's uncomfortable. Pretty sure that that's what Paul means when he says, it is now required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful, otherwise he will be cut to pieces. That's what Paul's saying right here. He's saying, this is how you should think about me. Like, I have amazing authority, but it's not mine. I'm over so much, like I'm making a difference in the eternal destinies of people, but it's not me. I'm just a steward. I'm a steward of the house, and I have a huge responsibility, and I don't answer to you, and I don't even answer to myself. I answer to God alone. That on the day that the master comes back, I better prove faithful according to his directions for me. So before we move ahead, and without looking ahead, don't cheat. Look at me. You, look at me. Why at this point, why do you think Paul is taking so much time to talk to the Corinthians about how they should view him? Do you think he really cares what they think about him? Can I give you a hint? In the very next verse, he says, I don't care what you think. So if he's not like, oh, I really want to cultivate what you think about me, my personal brand is going down in Corinth. Like if he's not doing that, then what's he doing? If he doesn't care what they think of them, what's the deal? And we see, if you look ahead in verse 6 and verse 16, he's going to say, I'm doing this for your benefit, and I want you to imitate me. That the whole point of this is that I'm going to give you an example to follow. I'm going to give you an example to follow. The whole reason I'm talking about how I'm a steward is so that you'll know how you're a steward. So I want you to follow this. If anyone in the universe had reason to have an inflated sense of self-importance, it was the Apostle Paul. I mean, the man was handpicked by Jesus to start what we know as the church age. Like he was the man who was to break out this idea that God wanted a relationship not just with Jews, but with the entire world. Like he was the one to take that, like his work would effectively change the lives of billions. His missionary work reshaped human history, and the words that he wrote are in the most published and most read book of all time in human history. Kind of a big deal. But I want you to follow this. Paul's like, I don't think of it that way, though. I don't think of myself that way. I don't see it that way. I'm nothing. Anything I have is from Jesus. He entrusted me with his work, and I'm responsible to fulfill my part of his mission. That's all I am. I'm an under-rower. I'm a steward. That's all that I am. Now, get this. If the Apostle Paul, who changed the course of history and affected the lives of billions, only thinks of himself in that way, on what basis do we have to think we're super important? That's the logic. I care very little if I am judged by you or by a human court. And he's like, can I just tell you, you don't like what I'm doing, I can tell. And I know some of you really want to give me feedback, so why don't you just send me those angry emails and I'm going to be like, delete. It's kind of fun. Delete. He's like, I don't care. I don't care what you think. And then he's going to go on and say, but I don't even care if you judge me. And I don't care if the world judges me because I don't answer to you. And I certainly don't answer to public opinion. Watch this. He fills it out though. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. Like in the end, I don't even get to judge myself. Like I'm not directed by how I feel about myself. I want you to hear this. I'm not directed by how I feel about myself. Can I just say personally, I have to apply this? Like if I was directed by how I felt about myself, I would quit every Monday. But no, I don't live by how I feel about myself. I live like the Apostle Paul, like all of us are called to live by faith. By faith. So I don't know that I'm important because I feel important. I know that I'm important because Jesus died for me. All right? I don't think my work's important because I achieved something. I think my work's important because God called me to it and it's his work. Do you see the difference there? Indeed, I do not even judge myself. I can't let how I feel direct my life. I have to live by faith. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. And if we could just for a second, if we just follow our conscience, Paul's saying we could be deceived. Like sometimes we believe our own lies. And can I tell you something? Sometimes we want to believe our own lies. It is the Lord who judges me. Just take that in. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes, until the master returns to judge the chief household slave. He's the only one who can judge. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. So what's hidden in darkness? It's your secret sins. They won't be secrets anymore. And the motives of your heart. You know, you might be able to fake it at church or at work. In fact, if you put on a big smile, you can fake it till you make it, right? And some of you are really good. You might be able to fake it at home. And if you really, really try hard, you might even be able to fool yourself. That's what the Apostle Paul is saying here. But here's the deal. On that day, Jesus won't be fooled. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness. He will expose the motives of the heart. So what's Paul getting at here? How does this fit in with, he just said, you and I were like the chief household slave. We've been entrusted. The master's coming back. But when he comes back, he says, I want you to put this together here. How are you going to be judged? How are you going to be judged? It seems to me that the Apostle Paul is saying it doesn't matter if everyone else in the world thinks you're a great Christian. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you think you're a great person and a great Christian and God must love you. That doesn't matter. All that matters is what Jesus thinks. All that matters is what Jesus thinks. And he doesn't just look at outward things. He doesn't just look at church attendance or giving or service. He looks at secret sins. And he looks at the motives of the heart. Which forces some terrible questions, right? Which I would be remiss if I didn't ask you right now, because someone needs to love you enough to ask you. When's the last time you dealt with your secret sins? And don't tell me you don't have any. When's the last time you pulled them out into the light so that they would be exposed and done away with now, as opposed to waiting to that day? How's your heart? Like, really? Like, what drives you and motivates you to do what you do? Is it the love of God? Is it His glory? Is it you want more of Him? Is it love for other people? Or is it not so noble? And do you even know? Or are you too busy to pay attention to your heart and you're just going to wait and see on that day? Can I say, the Apostle Paul is saying to me, to us, we got to deal with this today. That's all we have. You know, the first step in recovery is you got to admit you have a problem, right? Do you know this? You know what the fourth step is? Make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Are you ready to take a step, or is your plan to just wait and see how it all pans out in that day? Too convicting. Verse 6. Now, brothers and sisters, I have applied these things to myself, he says. Like, I've talked about myself and Apollos for your benefit. For your benefit. There's a model to follow. I've applied these for your benefit so that you may learn from us the meaning of the saying, do not go beyond what is written. Do not go beyond what is written. Scholars think that that final phrase there that or in quotations is a catchphrase, something you'd hear around town in Corinth at the day. In the immediate context of a master and slave, it would be like the master would write up his legal document saying, I'm traveling for 2 years. Here's what I'm empowering you with. Here's your authority. Here's what I'm giving you to do. Now, I'm leaving, but don't go beyond what's written. Don't go beyond what's written. This is the range. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how the master would delegate to the slave. And so the Apostle Paul picks this up and says, now I want you to learn from us what it means, do not go beyond what is written. When the Apostle Paul says, do not go beyond what is written, what do you think he's referring to? The written word. Thanks, Chris. The Bible. That's right. That's exactly it. He's saying, hey, can I tell you something? Our master, he's left, but he's coming back. And he's given us this written set of instructions, right? Of how to live in relationship with him, how to cultivate a heart for him. It's in there. If you follow that, if you ingest it, if you feed on that, you will become more like him. You will fulfill his will on the earth on earth as it is in heaven. That's our job. He says, now you've got to become a people of the word so that you can be faithful on the day he returns. You need to learn what that means. So can I just get on my soapbox just real quick here? If you don't know where you're at, like you've never defined your relationship with God, you're like a seeker or something, first of all, I'm so glad you're here. I really am. And you're totally welcome here, and I am excited just to see what God does in your life. But can I just encourage you, don't be a seeker forever. Like keep seek to find. And if you think it's even possible that the stuff I'm talking about is true, that Jesus might come back and you might have to stand before him someday, that the Bible might in some sense be the word of God, like might be from God, and it might reveal the way to know him, the way to cultivate a heart for him and become the people we're called to be. If you think that's even remotely possible, can I just encourage you, maybe you should read it for yourself. Maybe you should. And if you are a follower of Jesus Christ and you've never read the scriptures, can you tell me how you intend to faithfully represent him and further his work when you've never even read the instructions he's left? I mean, what's your plan? So Jesus comes back and he's like, so did you follow my instructions? And you're like, I never got around to reading those. Like I was going to, but then like the second season of Stranger Things 2 came out on Netflix and it's really good. Like, is that your plan? I'm not saying, let's be careful here. I'm not saying you have to be a scholar. You don't have to learn Greek and go to seminary. You don't. Some of you might, but you don't. And I'm not saying that reading the Bible and studying the Bible automatically makes you a better Christian, because I know biblical scholars who are arrogant, self-righteous, and unbelievers. All right? And I'm not even saying that you shouldn't watch Stranger Things 2. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I've never met a mature Christian who is not also passionately, deeply in the Word of God. Period. Living out God's will and living in God's Word go hand in hand. Living out God's will and living in God's Word go hand in hand. Somebody should tweet that right now. But more importantly, somebody needs to apply that right now. So who here today is like, I've never actually read the whole Bible? 2018, it's your year, man. This is great. They got these wonderful apps. They'll remind you every morning, hey, here's the passage you're supposed to read. In a year, it's not that much time. It takes about the same amount of time it would take to watch the entire season of Stranger Things 2, coincidentally. In a year, you can read the entire Bible. You can lay the foundation. Read your Bible. Look at God's direction for you. And then Paul says, then you will not be puffed up. Then you will not be entitled. Then you will not think self-aggrandizing thoughts. Then you will not be puffed up and being a follower of one of us over and against another. That when we recognize that we're all stewards of God, that we are chief household slaves of God's household, we are just doing what he commanded, then we will not be puffed up. It deflates our pride. It spoils our sense of self-importance. And then we realize that our success, our money, our education, our talents, they're not really ours at all. They're just ours to use for God. Which leads us to verse 7. Who makes you different from anyone else? Except, of course, you millennials, you're special. Snowflakes. Sorry. What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not? Like you're a steward. That's all you are. That's all I am. That's all we are. You're a steward of what God's given you. So are you wealthy? Sure. Are you educated? Do you have perfect complexion? Like, do you get to travel the world? Do you have freedom and authority and influence? Sure. But have you ever asked for a second, why? Like, why wasn't I born in sub-Saharan Africa? Why wasn't I born with a terrible handicap? Why has God entrusted me with all these gifts? Like, could it be that God gave me all these gifts because I'm so great and He wants me to have a great house and lots of vacation time and enjoy the beach and get a hot wife and retire in someplace exotic? And the Apostle Paul's like, no, that's not it. Everything you have, your money, your job, your education, your whatever, everything you have is from God and for God. He entrusted it to you for His kingdom. And it gets worse. So Jesus, in that I'll cut you to pieces passage, he ends it like this. He says, Jesus, for everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. And I don't know about you, but I read that and it kind of makes me want to puke. I don't know about you, but I feel like maybe we've been entrusted with maybe a bit more than our fair share. And it seems like from that passage that Jesus is going to expect much more from us because He's entrusted us with so much. So why did God entrust you with much? So that He could ask much more from you. And if this isn't bad enough, the Apostle Paul is going to rub it in. He's going to pull out this lurid, almost over-the-top, obnoxious image here. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And he's going to put this disparity. He wants to see the disparity between the Corinthians and how they're thinking, a sense of a life of self-entitlement and self-aggrandizement versus the apostles and their lives and how they think as stewards. So watch this, verse 8. Already you have all you want. This is the Greek term for someone who's had too much to eat. So this is Thanksgiving. Uncle Eddie eats so much he has to unbuckle his pants and everyone's like, ugh. That's what that is. Already you have all you want. Already you have become rich. You've begun to reign, and that without us. How I wish you really had begun to reign so that we might reign with you. So he's like, oh, look at you. You think you've already achieved God's kingdom on earth. You think you're so great. You think you're already living in heaven, and that's so nice. It would be nice to live in heaven. I would like to enter your world, but let me tell you what my world's like. Verse 9, for it seems to me that God has put us apostles on display at the end of the procession like those condemned to die in the arena. We have been made a spectacle to the whole universe, to angels as well as human beings. All right, I'm going to unpack this in a minute, but just roll with me. For we are fools for Christ, but you are so wise in Christ. We are weak, but you're so strong. You are honored, we are dishonored. To this very hour we go hungry and thirsty. We're in rags, we're brutally treated, we are homeless. We work hard with our own hands. When we're cursed, we bless. When we're persecuted, we endure it. When we are slandered, we answer kindly. We have become the scum of the earth, the garbage of the world, right up to this very moment, which leads us to this. So, in ancient Rome, did you know they didn't use soap? Isn't that weird? In fact, do you know what they used to bleach their togas to keep them nice and white? Human urine. Can you imagine what that must have smelled like in the crowds there? Just the amount of BO in the 100-degree Corinthian where the clean people smell like urine. Yes. So you go to the bath, though, and how do they wash if you don't have soap? You pour oil on yourself, or they pour oil on you, and then you use one of these things, these little scrapers, to scrape all the nasty stuff. So you're out there in the 100-degree Corinthian heat, dust everywhere all day, and then you go to the bath to clean up, and you just smell terrible. Urine's the clean-smelling stuff, right? And then you pour oil all over you, you scrape it off, and it all goes down to the drain. And that image of the stuff that's left in the drain, like the image of what would be left, scraped off your body, and then gunked up in the drain, something like this. That is what the scum of the earth, the garbage of the world, means in Greek. He says, now I want you to get this picture. you are kings, you're so rich, you're already living in heaven. And we're that. Told you it was over the top. So Paul says this, and he says, now let's backtrack real quick, because the whole thing is built on this verse 9. He says, for it seems to me that God has put us apostles on display at the end of the procession, like those condemned to die in the arena. So at the end of the procession, you're like, a procession. So let's give a historical context here. Let's give one example that we could multiply. 171 BC, King Perseus of Macedonia, he's fed up with this Roman Republic and how they're taking over the world. So he goes and he takes back a few Roman colonies. He's trying to create this buffer between Macedonia and the Roman Republic. And the Romans, they don't take kindly to this. And if you know anything about Rome, they do what they always do in these situations. If you make them mad, they're like, oh, you took a couple of our colonies. I guess we're going to have to utterly destroy you. So that's what they do. So in a couple years later, 168 BC, the Roman consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus, good name there, he leads the army in an attack, and in 15 days, which is impressive even by Roman standards, in 15 days, they capture King Perseus, overthrow the entire Macedonian empire, free the Roman colonies, and plunder the entirety of the Macedonian empire. They take all the booty from there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you read Plutarch on this, the lives of the Caesars, right? If you read this, here's where it gets interesting. The language that they're going to use here, the language of a Roman military victory, is going to now echo and form the language of victory on the pages of the New Testament. So get this. Aemilius sends out messengers. Messengers. Do you know what those messengers were called? Evangelists. He sends out evangelists, and they're supposed to go to all the cities around and say, hey, you're now free. Rome has set you free. We are bringing you the good news, literally the gospel. Evangelists come with the gospel. That our great leader has set us free. He's won the victory on our behalf. The evil king has been defeated. His reign has ended. You're a free people. And then Aemilius makes a glorious return home to Rome with all the booty, the plunder, the army with him. And they shut down Rome for 3 full days, and they have what is described as a triumph of victory. And in this triumph, this centerpiece of the triumph is that you have a triumphal procession. And so it's described in detail. Everyone in Rome would come out and they would throw rose petals out like ticker tape, right? And then first you have the trumpeters and the big like kettle drums coming through to announce, hey, it's a triumphal a procession getting ready to begin. And then you'd have these carts lugging the spoils of war, and you'd have all these people throwing gifts out to all the people. You're the victors. Here's some gifts. And then at the very front of the procession itself was the man, the victor, Aemilius. And he's riding in a golden chariot pulled by white horses. Followed by him were all the important people, the royalty, the wealthy, the famous. And then came the army, thousands and thousands of soldiers marching victorious through the streets. And then finally, at the very end of the procession, was a great train of captives. So the defeated Macedonian generals, royalty, Perseus himself, they are now stripped of their weaponry, power, authority. In some cases, they're actually stripped of their clothes. They're naked, and they're now ashamed, humiliated, beaten, and the people would spit on them, laugh at them, mock them, and then they would be taken to the arena where they would be killed for sport in front of tens of thousands of cheering fans. Here's a depiction. You can see this in Rome today on the triumphal arch of Titus in the Roman Forum. This is an emperor. This is actually Titus himself returning from defeating Jerusalem, of all places. So that's an example that you see. Now, here's what the Apostle Paul wants us to see, though. He picks up this image, and the only reason I went through that is because you're going to hear that imagery used in Ephesians, in Colossians, 2 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, Revelation. Like, this is the language of victory of what Christ has achieved for us. So the Apostle Paul is going to pick this up as he's going to say, we're like that. The Corinthians and us, we're like that. We're just like a procession. And he's going to say, you're the rich, strong victors at the front of the triumphal procession, and we are like the conquered slaves being dragged to an untimely death and mocked by everyone at the end of it. So what words describe the Corinthians? He's like, you're satisfied, rich, wise, strong, and honored. And what words describe us? We're hungry, poor, foolish, weak, dishonored. Like that pretty much sums it up, he says. Like that's the difference. You're at the front, you're the rich kings, that's how you think of yourselves, and we are the slaves being dragged to our death at the end. Now, I want you to look at that list real quick. And I want to ask you a question. Which list looks more like the way of Jesus and the way he lived? The apostles, right? Jesus was humiliated, mocked, and finally crucified in weakness. Jesus looks like the apostles. Now here's the question. Which of these looks more like us? I don't want to undermine or oversimplify this. I don't want to minimize what you may be going through, because I know some people in this room are going through and have gone through terrible things. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, by and large, we look more like the Corinthians than like the apostles on this one. So, let me be careful. This is not to say that we are necessarily living in sin or doing anything immoral because we are satisfied, rich, wise, strong, and honored. It's not. The Corinthians were. It's not to say that. But can I just suggest to you that if we look more like the Corinthians than the apostles, the fact of the matter is we are very likely to face the same temptation as the Corinthians, that we will be tempted to take on an air of self-importance, that we will be tempted to assume personal entitlement, that we will be tempted to somehow think that we deserve God's blessing, and if we are not careful, like the Corinthians, we will be ruined by our success. Can I just say that the Apostle Paul is not just trying to make us feel bad? Look at this, verse 14 here. I'm writing this not to shame you. Like, we're not talking about this to make you feel bad for being rich or wealthy or educated or honored or whatever. We're not writing this to shame you, but to warn you as children. Like I'm not here to give you a beating, he says. Like, I'm here to warn you. Like, if you don't cultivate a heart of a steward, your heart's going to be ruined. Like, if you don't cultivate that now, in the midst of all this, you're going to stand before our Lord someday and have to make an answer for how you've lived. I'm writing this to warn you, even if you had 10,000 guardians in Christ. This is the word pedagogues, you know this? So these are the guys who the slaves who would teach children in schools, and they would beat them into submission. It says, you might have 10,000 people lined up ready to beat you. You do not have many fathers, though. For in Christ Jesus, I became your father through the gospel. I am not here to beat you or to shame you. I'm here to be your father. Therefore, I urge you to imitate me, to think like me. Think of yourself as a steward. Act like a steward. Cultivate the heart of a steward. Think, I am a chief household slave for God. That's what I am. That's what I am. I'm God's steward. The reason he gave me wealth, the reason he gave me education, the reason he gave me position, the reason he gave me abilities, talents, everything he gave me is so that I can leverage it for him, leverage it for him, leverage it for him. And that is what will protect us if we imitate Paul in cultivating that heart. So today, I just want to shut things down with 3 really practical, really simple points on how to do this. And there are a million ways we could slice this up, but I just want to encourage you to first, every day, do something every day, every week, every year, every day to pray like a steward. And here's what I mean. In your prayers, thank God for what he's giving you and recognize that you didn't create it. Thank God for your abilities, for your gifts, for your money, for your house, for your life, for your breath. Thank God for that. Pray that God would give you wisdom on how to use it for His kingdom. And in doing so, you're recognizing it's His. It's His. I got to respond to Him. I got to report to Him. It's His. It's His. It's His. And I promise you that if you thank God for doing it, if you recognize your responsibility, if you ask Him for direction and wisdom, you do this every day, it will start to shape your heart. You have the heart of a steward. Next, every week, invest like a steward. Invest your money, time, energy, talents, things on things that will maximize return when Jesus comes back. And this is not rocket science. You know what they are. Love, sharing, serving, blessing, caring for others, other-centered things. Those are the things we should be investing our lives in. And can I just say, though, in this audience in Chester County, this is not about money, but it's about money here. Jesus plainly says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And if you are not investing, if you are not putting your treasure in God's kingdom, Jesus says, you got a heart problem, you got a heart problem, you got a heart problem. You cannot cultivate a heart of a steward if you're investing only in yourself. You can't. So every week, every day, pray like a steward. Every week, invest like a steward. And can I just say, at the end of time, when you stand before our Lord, don't let something as stupid as money stop you from becoming the person He's called you to be. Can I just tell you, I know a lot of really wealthy people, and they will tell you, money will not bring you happiness. It will not bring you joy. It will not bring you security. It is a false god. Don't believe it. Number 3, every year, go somewhere, and I'm just going to say, go somewhere outside of Chester County. Do you know what I mean? So this is why we go to Bulgaria every year and we send a team. You don't have to go to Bulgaria, but Bulgaria is a great place. Go to Bulgaria. And I want you to meet the children that you're ministering to, and I want you to see how they live. And then Kosio, our supportive missionary who's on the ground and runs the ministry throughout the year, go to his house. When he invites you there for coffee, go to his house, and I want you to count the number of beds in the house, because there's a bed in the kitchen. There's 2 beds in the living room. There's 1 small, terrible toilet. I want you to just go through his house and count how many people sleep there, and he and his wife and baby live there. And I want you to see how he's living for God's sake in that place. And I want you to ask yourself, I want you to think, why did God make me rich and influential and powerful and give me such freedom and no persecution? I want you to say, like, God has made you rich, educated, influential. God has gifted you. He's giving you enormous freedom. Now here's the question. What are you going to do with it? Because those to whom much has been given, much more will be expected. How are you going to invest your time? Because the Master, He's coming back. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would do the hard work in us to make us stewards of your kingdom. And God, I look at our church and I look at my own life, and I think we have an embarrassment of riches, not just money, but talents and skills and abilities and influence in our community and in our corporations and in our families and around the world, Lord. And God, I pray that we will be a people like the Apostle Paul who will leverage it for your kingdom and for your glory. God, I dream of a day where we bring before you 100 and 1,000-fold return on what you've invested in us, and we lay it at your feet. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.